Tonight we're going to do a quick review of the 11 chapters that we've covered so far. And then the plan is to cover chapters 12 and 13. So, a quick review. We start out with an overview of what the book of Revelation is all about. And that is, it's a book that, the only book in the Bible with a blessing that says, those who read it and understand it and put it to practice are blessed. And the overall structure is the book is in 3 sections. The first section is chapter 1, and chapter 1 is about an introduction, talks about the blessing, a vision of glorified Jesus Christ, no longer a lamb but a lion now, because he's coming back to rule and reign forever. So, and then we go to in chapter 1, it also mentioned he commissioned Apostle John to write some letters and send it to the churches. And then in section 2 is what is called the things that are, the things which are, which is chapters 2 and 3. And then we go over and that's the letters that was dictated to John and sent to all the 7 churches in an area called Asia Minor, which is current-day Turkey right now, and telling them his expectation in terms of how we are supposed to conduct ourselves as individuals and also as churches. So he's basically letting us know in advance, these are my expectations of each and every one of us, and we need to pay attention to that. And then the last section, which is things there hereafter, that's chapter 4 through chapter 22. In chapter 4, we talked about rapture, in which case Apostle John found himself in heaven, and one of these days Christ is going to come back and he's going to pick the people who are ready to go with him to heaven. And then everybody's going to be running skelter to say, what happened to all these people? Anyway, that's another story. I'm not going to dwell on that. We also, while in heaven, we also saw the scroll, which is chapter 5, that was God the Father had in his hand. And the question is, who can open the scroll? And the only person that can open the scroll, of course, is Jesus Christ. So he took the scroll. And in chapter 6, he began to open the scroll. And chapter 6 is the beginning of the tribulation period. So because every time he opens a seal, there's a judgment that is pronounced on earth. So there's 7 seals, and we went through that. And then in chapter 7, we saw the mercy of God, the 144,000 Jewish evangelists that are going to come and go around the world and tell everybody about Jesus Christ. So, and then we go to chapter 8, we're back to the seals again, the judgments again, and in this case now we're going into the judgment calls instead of seals, they are called trumpets. And then, of course, the trumpets are more severe than the seals, but anyway, it's still not something pretty to behold, because by the end of we get to chapter 9, okay, which is the end of the trumpets, it's estimated that half of the population of the world would have been wasted. So if you look at it and say we got 8 billion people in the world today, at the end of chapter 9, half of the people would be dead. Okay, so the judgments are not something to take very lightly. And then, of course, we get to chapter 10, and we saw the little scroll that the angel was telling John to eat, and it was bitter, it was sweet and bitter. Sweet in the sense that he was able to see what is going to happen in the end, that everything is going to be fine. We're going to be victorious, and devil is going to lose. But at the same time, there's more judgment coming, and they are more severe than what we've seen so far, which is the reason why it was kind of bitter. Then in chapter 11, we saw the new temple, because the temple is going to be rebuilt, but it's going to be rebuilt either before the beginning of the 7-year tribulation period. But either way, the temple will be rebuilt, and the Jewish people will do the ceremonies that they used to do in the Old Testament, because that's where they still are right now. They will go back to that, even though the Antichrist will still be around. But one of the things that the Antichrist is going to do when he comes on the scene, which is in chapter 6, is to negotiate a peace treaty with the Jewish people and all the surrounding Arab nations, so that eventually everybody's going to feel that there will be peace in the world. And part of that agreement is the fact that the Jewish people will be allowed to build the temple, and it's going to be built alongside of the mosque that is sitting in where the temple is right now. So anyway, so we'll kind of get along for a while, so to speak. So, and then of course, when part of chapter 11 is the two major witnesses, two witnesses that are going to come. And these are Old Testament saints like Elijah, and it could be Moses, okay, or it could be Enoch, okay. We know that Enoch didn't die, Elijah didn't die, but Moses died. So it doesn't matter who comes back anyway, but they are going to be very, very effective, because they will be able to tell and minister to the Jewish people to say that what you're doing is pointing to Jesus. Jesus is coming. You need to listen to what he's saying, and what you're doing right now is not what you're supposed to be doing. You're going to be able to convince a lot of people. And of course, the whole world will know about them, because we'll try to kill them. And if they say fire come down, fire is going to come down and destroy whatever. If they say no rain, okay? So they're going to terrorize the Antichrist for 3.5 years, but eventually, as we read last week, God is going to allow them to be killed, and they'll have them be shown lying on the streets in Jerusalem, and after 3 days, God is going to raise them up. So even the people that don't believe in rapture will see, actually, they say the whole world is going to see them rise and go to heaven, right? So, which is another confirmation that all the things that they're seeing is all about God. And if the people that are still alive, it's by the mercy of God, hopefully most of them would change their mind and believe in God and be saved, okay, based on the fact that they've repented. So that's where we ended up. And we ended up with the seventh trumpet, okay. The seventh trumpet is where we ended up anyway, because the seventh trumpet is going to release the 7 bowls, but we're not going to cover the bowls until we get to chapter 16. So this week we're going to do 12 and 13, and then next week we'll do 14 and 15 and 16. So we'll do, because we're getting closer to the end. That's the point I'm trying to make. A couple of things I want to bring to our attention today, though, is the fact that we need to be aware of the fact that the book of Revelation is not supposed to scare us, but at the same time, it's going to forewarn us. And if you are forewarned, it's to be forearmed. We need to start doing things that will make it possible for us to be able to partake in this new earth and new heavens that is coming by the time we get to chapter 22. So it's important that we take it very seriously and pay attention to what Jesus is telling us in chapters 2 and 3 to say, these are my expectations of what you need to be doing. Which of course means that we have to live a holy life and make sure that we also understand that we don't know when rapture is going to happen. We don't know when it's coming back. It could be tomorrow, okay? So that means that we have to kind of make it a conscious effort to think about it on a daily basis to say, how am I doing, okay? And also maybe also when you do your prayer, make sure you add, please, when you come back, don't leave me behind because being left behind is not pretty anyway. It's not pretty. Even though there's an opportunity for the people that don't know Christ or they know Christ and they don't take you very seriously to repent, but the environment is not going to be very, very, it's going to be more hostile than what it is right now. That's what I'm trying to say. So anyway, we can also look at the letters again, like I mentioned, to make sure that we know what we are doing and take that into consideration. One other thing, of course, I want to emphasize is that no matter what, after the 3.5 years, when the Antichrist now reveals himself as the devil incarnate, that is when they start the mark of the beast, okay, which we don't know what that is, but if you don't have the mark, you won't be able to sell, buy, do whatever. In any case, that basically means that you can't do anything. You can't walk, you can't buy, you can't say anything, you can't borrow money, can't even go to the bank and take your money because they say, where's your mark? Okay, so it's going to be a very disastrous period for the people that don't have the mark. But no matter what, don't take the mark, because if you take the mark, that means that person can never be redeemed. It's done. You are basically sealed. Whoever took the mark basically sealed their faith, and they can never again be redeemed. Okay, now let's move on to chapter 12. Chapter 12 is about the woman, the child, and the dragon. Okay, I'm just going to read a few verses and I'll explain exactly what all that means. So now a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. Then being with a child, she cried out in labor and in pain to give birth. And another sign appeared in heaven, behold, a great fiery red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 diadems on their heads. He still drew a third of the stars of heaven and threw them on the earth. The dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth to devour her child as soon as it was born. She bore a male child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God and his throne. Then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared by God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days, which is 3.5 years. This is talking about Israel. Okay, the first verse that has to do with the sun, the woman clothed with the sun and the moon, it kind of goes back to the dream of Joseph when he was still growing up, about the plan of God for his life. Okay, that says everything is going to bow down to him, right? So this is talking about the Israel and the birth of the nation of Israel. The sun and the moon, of course, are Jacob and Rebecca. I think it's Rebecca, or I keep forgetting the name of the wife of Jacob. Anyway, the one that bore Esau and the one that brought Joseph and his brother Benjamin. Anyway, so the whole idea is the fact that to be able to show us that God is still interested in Israel, and it's going to go back and deal with their situation, right? So that God hasn't forgotten them yet. And what is going to happen here is the fact that the dragon that we saw, of course, is the devil. Okay, the devil is always been persecuting Israel from day one. He's always persecuting Israel from day one. And because of that, we see that here, and we see that's the reason why he hates. Because the whole idea was, it goes back to what happened in the Garden of Eden when Adam and Eve sinned, and God told the serpent, which is of course the devil, to say, this is what is going to happen. I'm going to put an enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed, and he shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. Satan knows about that. Somebody is coming that is going to mess me up, and he's been trying all along to make sure that the Messiah, Jesus Christ, never showed up. And if we go back and look at the history of the birth of Jesus Christ. I mean, the king Herod tried to kill all the babies, but he wasn't successful because God is always one step ahead of him anyway. So the whole idea that the whole idea is to make sure that we understand that God would always protect Israel. God has a covenant with Israel that is going to fulfill, and we see that the beginning of that here. Right? They also talked about the dragon that pulled down a third of the stars. There was its initial rebellion of Satan. It was one of the angels. Okay, he was in charge of praising God, and of course he rebelled to say, "I want to be like God," and he convinced a third of the angels to go with him, and that's what we read about. But here also we see that was always trying to kill Jesus, and even up to the point that the cross, we know that he thought that if he's able to kill Jesus on the cross, that's the end of it, but he didn't know that Jesus was going to resurrect. I didn't know that he knew that because God doesn't tell him everything, of course. He wouldn't have crucified, he wouldn't have let people crucify Jesus, but now he already lost. But that's what we are reading about at the first portion of it. We also read about the government that Satan is going to use to be able to continue to try to destroy Israel. Okay, we saw that we mentioned that we saw that there is the great fiery dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 diadems. That is talking about all the different empires that has ruled the world. We know that Satan is the king of this world anyway, the god of this world. So all the empires that ruled, there were 7 of them. We go back to the Assyrian Empire, the Egyptian Empire, the Babylonian Empire, the Medo-Persian Empire, the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire, and there's a last one that is going to come up very soon. I don't know, but that is going to be revived very soon. Is either going to be Roman or is that going to be Ottoman? Most people would say it's going to be the old Roman Empire, but some people are beginning to say, no, maybe it's not the old Roman Empire, maybe the Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire is basically all the Muslim nations that are surrounding Israel today, because that used to be an empire that rose up and that is basically based on the Muslim, the Islam religion, right? So anyway, okay. Now, we also said that the woman, the child that was born was caught up into heaven, okay? And some people at this particular point say that the man-child is actually the church. So some people place rapture at this particular point, which means all the Christians would have to go through the 6 seals and the 7 trumpets before, or the 6 seals, no, the 6 seals, okay, and the 6 trumpets before rapture actually happens, which means we have to go through all the wars, all the afflictions, especially when they talk about the locust that is going to attack everybody that doesn't have the seal for 5 months. So that is saying that we'll go through that, and God is not going to do that. So I don't believe that their way of thinking is correct, because it's not. He already told us that we're not going to any part condemnation or wrath. Okay, so and then of course we also read that the woman flee into the wilderness, and she was sustained there for 3.5 years. Again, that means a portion of the Israelites are going to flee to a particular area in Jordan right now. It's like it's called Petra, but it's basically an old area that is rocks, and they have things in that. There's mountains anyway, but within the mountain, people used to live there a long time ago. And this particular area can sustain a lot of people. And what people are saying is the fact that God is going to provide them and make sure that Satan doesn't get to them, and make sure that he keeps them safe, right, for that 3.5 years that we read about. Okay, then when we go on to verse 7, and it says, and war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought with the dragon and his angels fought. But they did not prevail, nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer. So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old called devil Satan, who deceives the world, and he was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast with him. Then I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ has come. For the accuser of the brethren, who accused them before our God day and night, has been cast down. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and the sword and the word of their testimony, and they did not love their lives to the death. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you, having great wrath, because he knows that his time is short. Okay, this again is to let us know that there was a war in heaven at this particular point. So now they cast out the devil, so he's no longer allowed to go and visit and accuse us in front of God anymore. From this particular point onwards, it's an indication to him that his time is short. So he's not going to come back to he's now going to be on earth now, and it's going to rather start persecuting all Christians and everyone that Israel also. And that's what we see going on from now on. One of the things I also want to point out, Michael here is the archangel Michael, and he's the only one that's an archangel in the Bible. Also, verse number 11 that said that, and they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives even unto death. It goes to show that one of the things that we need to be aware of is the fact that dying for Christ is not something that is bad. It actually is good, because we know that we are going to be resurrected and we're going to be able to rule and reign with Christ. So it's important that we make sure that we are full of the word, and also make sure that we can plead the blood of the Lamb, because that is what is going to sustain us no matter what. So now we'll go to the last half of chapter 12. And now, when the dragon saw that he has been cast to the earth, he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child, and the woman was given 2 wings of eagle, that she may fly into the wilderness, to a place where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time from the presence of the serpent. So the serpent spewed water out of his mouth like a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away by the flood. But the earth helped the woman. The earth opened his mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon had spewed out of his mouth. And the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went to make war with the rest of her offspring, who kept the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. So what this is saying is the fact that the devil is going to be so mad that he's going to try and go after the woman as much as possible, which means he's going to try and get an army together to go and attack them where they are. But this is saying that God is going to protect them. The earth is going to open up and swallow the army that the devil is sending to go and attack them. So again, God is very faithful. He's going to make sure that his people are protected. But Satan is going to turn around, and anybody that is saying that I believe in Jesus is going to make sure that he's going to fight them, and chances are he's going to kill a lot of people in this process. So when we read about half of the people being gone, this is part of that too, right? Now we move down to chapter 13, and chapter 13 has to deal with another characters that we know, but we're going to see them in a different light. We're going to see again the Antichrist, and we're going to be introduced to what is called the false the false prophet. The Antichrist is going to be in charge of the government. The false prophet is going to be in charge of the religion. So I'm going to read part of that, and we'll talk about what that is all about. Chapter 13. And the dragon Satan stood by the sandy shore of the sea. Then I saw a vicious beast coming out of the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads, with his horns were 10 royal crowns or diadems, and on his head were blasphemous names. And the beast that I saw resembled a leopard, but his feet were like those of a bear, and his mouth was like that of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his throne and great authority. I saw one of his heads, which seems to have a fatal wound, but his fatal wound was healed, and the entire earth followed after the beast in amazement. They fell down and worshipped the dragon because he gave his authority to the beast. They also worshipped the beast, saying, "Who is like as great as the beast? Who is able to wage war against him?" And the beast was given a mouth, a power of speech, uttering great things and arrogant and blasphemous words, as he was given freedom and authority to act and do as he pleased for 42 months, 3.5 years. He opened his mouth to speak blasphemies, abusive speech against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and those who live in heaven. He was permitted to wage war against the saints, God's people, and to overcome them, and authority and power over every tribe and people and language and nation. All the inhabitants of the earth will fall down and worship him, everyone whose name was not written since the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb, who has been slain. If anyone has ear, let him hear. If anyone is destined for captivity, he will go into captivity. If anyone kills with a sword, he must be killed with a sword. Here is the patience and endurance and faithfulness of the saints. Okay, that's the end of that. What this is saying is the fact that this is the beginning of when the Satan is going to now basically now become indwelling in the Antichrist, and that's now they call him a beast. Okay, so he's going to go from a regular person to now a demon possessed person. Okay, so instead of just having being, let's say, wicked, okay, not believing in God, now is going to be the evil Satan himself is going to be indwelling in him, right? So that it's going to be worse than what it was before, but he can only do that for 3.5 months. 42 months, 3.5 years, 42 months. So what this is also letting us know that he's going to wage war. Okay, this is where again the persecution is going to be more intense. We know that the tribulation period is 7 years. So the first half is 3.5 years. This is beginning at the beginning of the second half is when he's going to be demon possessed, when Satan is going to now live inside of him, and we know that he's going to have the abilities that of the leopard, bear, and lion. These are the previous empires that ruled before him, right? So he's going to combine a combination of all the different empires that ruled before him. So it's going to be more fierce and more brutal than anything that the world has ever seen. A couple of things that we also read about here is the fact that he's going to suffer a fatal wound. And out of that fatal wound, of course, after that, he's going to recover. And what that is telling us to say that maybe there will be a fake death and resurrection. So he's going to act like his Antichrist is going to act, or the beast is going to act as if he's Christ, okay? They're going to fake that they killed him, and then he was resurrected. And after that, everybody's going to say, wow, this guy is something else. And everybody's going to bow down to him. Because now it's working in the authority of Satan and acting and living and breathing Satan every second of the day. Now, we're going to move to the second part of the chapter 13, which I'm going to read, that said, "Then I saw another beast rising out of the earth. He had 2 horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. He exercised all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and he makes the earth and those who inhabit it worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. He performs great signs, even making fire fall from the sky to the earth before people's eyes. He deceives those who inhabit the earth because of the signs which was given by Satan to perform in the presence of the first of the beast, telling those who inhabit the earth to make an image of the beast who was wounded by the sword and has come back to life. And he was given the power to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast would even speak and cause those who do not bow down and worship the image of the beast to be put to death. Also, he compels all, the small and the great and the rich and the poor, the free man and slaves, to be given a mark on their hand or on their forehead, and that no one will be able to buy or sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the name of the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let the person who has enough insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is a perfect number of man, and the number is 666. So this is again the sidekick of the beast. He is the one that is going to be called the false prophet. They didn't call him the false prophet here. They just call him the beast from the sea. So we have the beast from the sea, from the earth. So we have the beast from the sea, and also we have the beast from the earth. So the beast from the earth is going to be the sidekick of the beast from the sea. So one is the Antichrist that is now got the Satan indwelling in him. And now this is the religious, the false, the religious counterpart. He is the one that is going to coordinate and make people bow down to the beast. As we read, he is going to also make an image, because of the fact that they've been able to fake the death and resurrection of the beast. He's going to say, now we need to make an image of the beast, and everybody has to bow down to that beast, to that image. And if you don't bow down to the image, you're gone. Also, at this particular time, he's going to create that system that says you have to have the mark or you won't be able to buy or sell. And if you can't do that, you're out of luck. You're on your own. So again, that's the reason why we know more about computers now. We know that again, the mark could be a computer chip. The image could be a human-like robot, because now they're making robots like look at people and they can talk and they can interact with people. So all these things are possible now that we're reading about in the Bible. So it's very important to understand that all this technology that is being mentioned here about 2,000 years ago is something that is visible to us right now, that we can see robots, we can see very small chips that people can put on their forehead, on their hand, and these are the things that the future holds. But it's important, like I said, that we see all these things. That Satan is going to deceive as much as possible everybody, and it's only the people that are not the people that believe in Christ, the people that, like they said, your name is written in the book of the Lamb since the foundation of the world. Those are the people that would be saved. So again, it's important though for us to understand that a lot will be going on to deceive everybody. A lot is going to be going on to make sure that people take that mark. A lot is going to be going on to make sure that people follow Satan, okay? Because he, like they say, misery loves company. He doesn't want to be the only one in hellfire. He wants as many people as possible to go with him. So The other point I also want to make from what we read about the number 6 is the number of man. So 666 is an imperfect. 6 is an imperfect number. You can't. So no matter how good you are as a man, you can't be God. That's what I'm trying to say. So even though Satan is going to try as much as possible to be God, he can never be God. So it's given that it is going to fail anyway. It's given that it's going to fail. So we've covered 12 and 13. One of the things I want to make sure we get out of this is the fact that we have a choice. Okay, we have to start making that choice right now. We have a choice based on what we read. We have seen what is going to happen. Okay, we have seen the carnage that is going to go on. We have seen that things get worse and worse as we go into the seven years of the tribulation. We are around the middle right now, that tribulation period from what we read. We can see that it's going to get more intense and more intense. So next we're going to be covering the judgments that is going to come down on earth. And they are worse than what we read so far. Okay, that's all I can say for now. I don't want to steal the thunder. But the point I want to leave us with today is the fact that we have a choice. We have a choice to decide whether we want to accept or refuse God's grace, God's love, God's forgiveness, which of course will lead to everlasting life. Or if we say we're not going to listen, we also know the reverse is true: everlasting death, everlasting separation from God, everlasting torment in hell, right? So I want to close today with 2 Bible verses that we wish to use to pray. The first one is in Hebrews 2:1 that says that we must listen very carefully to the truth we have heard, or we may drift away from it. So we have to listen very carefully to the truth that we have heard, or we may drift away from it. The second one is in Hebrews also 4:11. Hebrews 4:11 that says, "Let us therefore be diligent to enter that rest, lest anyone fall according to the same example of disobedience." So let us therefore be diligent to enter that rest, lest anyone fall according to the same example of disobedience.